I love that.
Let the carbon and monoxide choke my thoughts away. Your pretty body's help dissolve the memories. They can never be what she wants to be. She's gone. She's gone. I better let her face. She's gone. She's gone. She's gone.
I mean, that'll be great. We don't have to do that. Okay. Yeah. Okay, guys. So what I want to do tonight is read, I was saying to you, chapter 1 and probably chapter 3, if I can. I'll skip chapter 2 because I'll just go straight to more like dramatic scenes. And yeah, if you've got questions, yeah, I suppose, are there any questions before we start? Do you want me to give you some context about what this actually is?
Sure.
You know.
I think maybe he should have some context.
Use some context.
Yes, okay. So, you know Cinderella, the Cinderella story.
Yes.
And this story is like the untelling of Cinderella. So Cinderella is a story I've been obsessed with my whole life because it was like, you know, the first major fairy tale. And that was a lot of my belief structures came from Cinderella, that's a happy ending, a prince, a party, a ball, a good time, nice shoes, like all that stuff. And I feel that in my quest for dissolving patriarchal structures and writing alternative happy endings for women, there's conceptually talking about it, which is one thing, which I did for years and years before America. And now there's living that happy ending, which was part of moving to Hermosa, and writing an alternative story. So what is a modern day myth, a modern day fairy tale for a future generation that offers an alternative to being a princess? And I think it's about being the one wielding the magic. Who's the most interesting character of Cinderella, who actually is the catalyst for making everything happen? It's the fairy godmother. But she's this old, fat, white woman who is completely just irrelevant and diddery and doddery. And I wanted to give her a spotlight and her a moment of her story. Come on in. Hi. It's just us. It's a little group. Do you want to get any champagne or mimosa or? I haven't started reading yet, but yeah, get what you need. Yeah.
Just getting, we're just getting the context here.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Let me move that. So yeah, this is a chance. Or you can open the other one if you want.
Oh yes, there's also regular.
So this is writing a new narrative. It's a modern day fairy tale. It's a fairy tale that's never been told.
Did you say who the substitute is yet for the fairy godmother? Or
what do you mean the substitute?
Well, I'm assuming he's saying that because she's a fat white woman or whatever, there's some undoing of her being.
Well, first of all, yeah, she isn't even that. So by the time she goes to Cinderella,
it's like you that you manifest the whole thing. So you don't need the fairy godmother.
Oh, okay.
Thing, but I'm saying
no, ask
undoing it.
Ask whatever you want. Yeah. The undoing is about so like the story blurs the lines of like my philosophical belief and like things that I've taught for the years, emotional alchemy, the Rebella journey, the 7 phases of the heroine's journey, but it takes those concepts and it makes them real. So one of the concepts is in order to rewrite the future, you have to write the past. You have to admit and accept and reveal what happened. So this story tells Stella, the fairy godmother's story. When she goes to Cinderella, she's only 16. It's her challenge to get into the guardianship because one of the things which has been twisted in the world is that she was never the godmother. That's a human concept. She was the godmother of the guardianship of the North Star Kingdom. So the North Star Kingdom is where all the fairy tale characters you've ever heard of, they all live there, all of them. Even like, and I haven't woven them in yet, but even the throuple of lesbians from Sleeping Beauty, Mary with, the 3 lesbians who live together in the woods, but obviously like no one, they're just like, oh, the little aunties or whatever. No, they're like in a full-blown relationships. Like they're there. So I want to weave in the truth about all these things that were very obvious to me, but never explicitly said. So the North Star Kingdom has its own rules about reality, its own governing system, and part of that is the guardianship, which every magical creature gets trained for, to become a guardian of other, like they're the helpers of the universe. When Stella goes, she's only 16, but it's part of her shape-shifting ability because she's a fairy witch, and she shapeshifts into something which is not going to be threatening to a human girl. It's going to go unnoticed in the human world. But it's also her first it's her first time that she travels. So, and because of a lot of stress that she's been under from the night before, which is like the huge combination of the story, like something very bad happens, by the time she goes, she's very distressed and she makes a terrible mistake. And because of her mistake, we all know the Cinderella story. But this story is to go, she did something wrong, Stella. It wasn't her fault, but she did something very wrong. And this story needs to undo what she did so the truth can be told, so that we don't perpetuate the delusion that the idea is to be saved by a man. It's like, there are other options. So any other question? Is that giving context about what that is? Okay.
Very
So,
topical considering the whole Snow White controversy that's emerged with the Me Too and the kissing.
yes,
and
it's
the
all,
very-
yeah. It's all, rape culture, patriarchy.
Sleeping Beauty is the same. You talking about it today?
Yeah,
Sleeping Beauty is the same.
Sleeping Beauty, I mean, what did I say?
Yeah,
Snow White.
Snow White.
Yeah, yeah.
one of them's narcolepsy. One of them's, what's it when you have sex with dead people? That's
That's
Snow
Snow
White.
White.
That was Snow White.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like, yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, yeah.
I mean, I think it could actually be mistaken for, if you are narcoleptic, that you
Yes.
think the person's dead.
True. It's a fine line.
That's fine.
Yeah. So this story, but what we're going to read tonight is the beginning of Stella's journey. So it starts in the middle, we go to the beginning, and the beginning is quite sweet. You're learning about this little girl growing up. And what I'd love you to do is to look for the similarities that you can feel. It doesn't matter that she's a girl. In this kingdom also, it's gender fluid. Yes, you can, like, it's all blended. It doesn't matter, like, they're all creatures, it's all mixed. So you'll have hopefully a piece of Stella in you. And that's what I'd like you to look for when I'm reading, is what parts of this do you identify with? Do you relate to? Do you know what I mean? And what parts are you like, I really don't. Like, if you don't get something, let me know. What parts are really interesting and draw you in? What parts are boring? Like, just give me your full experience of this, because as you know, what I'm really interested in with the creative experience is sharing behind the scenes. The process of making is as magical as the finished product. So I want to dismantle that fourth wall and be like, here I am making this, writing this. My first agent pitch is this Sunday, which is very exciting, to pitch to an agent. Yeah. So like, and I'm doing this traditionally. I'm not doing this my normal way, which is I'll just do it myself and like market the whole thing and sell it. Like, I'm doing this like along traditional lines, because I would ultimately like this to be a trilogy of books and like a show on Broadway. Like, I want this to be my legacy work. Like, this is everything. Yeah. But yeah, let's see if you even enjoy it. Like, if it's even your vibe. Who knows? Like,
I don't know if this is the best sample. This might be a very small sample.
Yeah, I know, but
It doesn't go down well. Maybe 20 other people. Conversely, if we really love it, it might not be a good education either. So I don't need to read too much into it.
That's true. Yeah. If Jamie starts to like snore or sleep and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, yeah. No.
Jamie.
Fucking Jamie. Like, he's gonna like it. Yeah, it's good to experiment with sharing a story that I know so well. It's obvious to me. And when I write the story, it's like, I'm just writing the truth. It's like, I don't question any of this. So I want to know if that translates. Like, if you feel it as real as I do. And just, yeah. So I'll read, ask for questions, read again. I'm going to probably do 20 minutes and then maybe another 20 if I can. Yeah. All right. Any final questions?
Are we live?
Oh, but I mean, who's even on here? Probably no one. Let's see. It's like 3 people. It's like that. It's when you don't engage, no one's there. So no one can, don't worry about it. Yeah. I just do it in case.
But you 3 people.
Yeah. That's how I should be. Yeah. I should care more. Okay. Yeah, it's the thruple. They're on. All right. The fairy godmother. And doesn't have a name. I'm thinking of calling it Struck because of, when you strike with your wand, and a lot happened. Yeah, but let's see. She lay hopeless in a heap. See, not dead, said the blue gnome proudly. That's not her, said the smaller one. Oh, yes, it is. That's exactly her, said the taller. Excuse me, your magicness. Wakey, wakey, rise and shine. He poked her with his purple scaled walking stick. Stella stirred. Her wings cracked in 3 places, like the long divide in the dry slate but beneath her. The secondary cracks jutted sharp left and right, making a giant Y in the earth. Her once luminous skin now veiled ash gray. Her emerald eyes swollen closed. Her black hair matted, indigo dress tattered, barefoot with broken toenails. She had nothing left to give and nowhere left to go. Stella, you've been summoned. Your luck's about to change. You're needed and you're wanted. No one thinks that you're deranged. You don't have to sing it, Tote. Everything's better in song, Muscle. It really lands the delivery. Taller Tote tapped his quilled blue hat and tapped his feet. Rap-a-tap, stamp. Rap-a-tap, stamp. Once you twinkled like a star, now we wonder what you are. Where's the fairy witch inside you, the one who sparkles and who shines? Resurrect her out these ashes. Dust up. Return yourself to sublime. Stella sat, shielding her eyes from the scorching sun, and faced the gnome duo. Small Muscle had concerned blue eyes that stuck out on the sides of his face. His button nose was practically non-existent between his plump cheeks above blubbery lips. Taller Tote had a matching moon face. His few remaining teeth spaced out in generous gaps as if someone had plonked them in by accident. They wore matching teal capes and seaweed-polished black boots, a makeshift uniform of sorts, like they wanted to seem important, but had forgotten how. Stella almost recognized the silver trident on their tunics. It doesn't matter, she slurred. She's bamboozled, said Muscle. I knew it. I don't do magic anymore. Who said anything about doing that? Muscle stepped closer. That's why you're here, isn't it? You expect me to keep doing magic like nothing ever happened. Her raspy voice cracked against her white, peeling lips. Give her some nectar, Muscle. Tote was turning circles on the spot, very uncomfortable with the entire situation. He'd never seen a fairy witch so out of sorts. She snatched the bottle of nectar from his hands and guzzled. Tote crouched down, lining his face up under with Stella's hung overhead. He held her hazy gaze straight with his. He whispered, You don't do magic, Stella. Magic is what you are. A memory flickered across Stella's face. A resonance stirred in her bones. She gingerly cupped her hand onto the gnome's shoulder and hoisted herself to a standing position. I don't feel very well. I'm not, her voice trailed off, myself. You're always yourself, well feelings or unwell ones, sang Tote. Feelings come and go like the weather, encouraged Muscle, joining as a balancer to the right of Stella. Steady now, easy does it. The gnome stood on either side of the faded creature. She seemed smudged out in comparison to their vivid brightness. Something sparkled in the dusty grey a few feet away. It caught the sun on its sharp edge as if to say, Don't forget about me. Stella squinted in its direction, stumbled forward and picked it up. She blew the ash off its emerald surface and polished it against her torn pocket. She turned the amulet over and smoothed her hand over its surface to read the inscription on its silver clasp, then slipped the emerald amulet over her head. Tote was convinced her spine straightened the moment she did. A tentative smile parted her lips. I don't know where you want me to go, she said. Don't you worry about that, tapped Tote. The way we're going isn't yours or mine. We're just there to take you, one step at a time. Supported by two strange little blue gnomes, Stella stepped forward. Behind her, buried beneath the cracked surface, something shifted its weight. Its two red eyes glowed, following Stella's footprints like a sniper's target. Their eyes narrowed their stare as Stella and her little support team set off down the overgrown dirt path. The buried creature belched and closed its bleary eyes. She'll come back, it mumbled. I'm all she has left. It hoisted itself from its shallow grave. It grabbed a fistful of brittle thorn twigs from the dying bush and tossed them into the burnt-out fire pit. It pulled the broken stool together to reassemble. I gotta stop falling over. Its dehydrated laughter merged into a wheeze. She'll come back, it repeated, less convicted. Tote and Muscle arrived at the starlit shore. They carried Stella on a makeshift stretcher, one of their capes as her base support and the other as her blanket. Dry branches supported the sides. She wasn't the only one sweating. The gnomes placed her gently on the soft white sand. They bounced back into the ocean as quickly as their shaking legs could carry them. The moment they dived under the wave, they returned themselves to the fish creatures they once were, and swam back deep where they came from. Out from under the same crashing wave rose Siren, in all her moonlit glory. Her once black hair, now streaked silver, flowed long into the waters around her. 2 starfish covered her chest, and 100,000 beads of glass and shell and gemstone covered her body in necklaces of all different lengths and sizes. Her long fingernails parted the ocean waters into divided streams that then merged and collided. Instead of the vibrant aliveness that she'd known and loved, Siren looked upon a shell of a magical creature that was once, but no longer was. Unrecognizable, bloated, and frail. She'd never forgive herself for what she'd done. Magic was Stella's birthright, but Siren had known the risk due to the particular circumstance. She'd been in such a state, it was all too much, too soon. Any creature could have made such a mistake. She tried to warn her to stick to the practice, but it's impossible for personal matters not to affect performance. Siren didn't blame Stella, she blamed herself. What transpired was horrific. She shuddered thinking about it. The searching, the competing of creatures against one another, turning families against each other, breaking friendships in two, the relentless obsession, and the young girl enslaved in a place she was always meant to have escaped from. What was the world's fixation with shoes anyway? Where am I? Stella blinked her eyes open. Where you belong. Siren's voice bounced off the waters. It's enough, Stella. You can't hide from me any longer. You can't hide from the world. And most importantly, you can't hide from yourself. I'm a mess. Stella slouched forward, rubbing her head into a knot of brittle tangles. You're very obviously a mess. Stella almost smiled. I'm so ashamed of myself. I never thought... Siren paused, allowing her the space to continue. He was right. I made everything worse by trying to make it better. I wanted to help and I hurt everyone. I ruined the world. I ruined her life. I ruined everything. Her words blurred between her tears, which cascaded like a waterfall down her nose and into her mouth. And then I couldn't, she sobbed. It all fell apart. I was so busy with him that I couldn't save her. Stella, you were never meant to save anybody. That's not what magic is. No one can save anyone else. We can only ever save ourselves. I don't care about me. I care about them. That's literally what I trained for, to serve others and to protect and grant wishes. But wherever I go, pain and drama follow. I've lost everything. All I have is... Siren interrupted. I know you're hurting. And if I could take it away, I wouldn't. Stella looked up, confused. Pain is an excavation. It digs you deeper so you have more capacity. It gives your heart space to grow bigger. Stella, there is nothing more dangerous than a closed heart. There's only one way through all this. What? Stella asked. Love more, Siren answered. I can't. I tried already, Stella argued. It's too much. And besides, I wrecked everything. I can't go back and change it. And now you need to clean up the wreckage of your past. It's not going to be easy, but you don't have to go on like this. I'm so tired. I'm so sick and tired of everything. I just want it to be over, said Stella. Sick and tired of being sick and tired. Siren smiled warmly. Her electric eyes shone turquoise in the night. Stella exhaled. Exactly. And her face softened in hope. Are you willing to take certain steps to undo what must be undone? Couldn't even walk here. I don't have the strength. Forget it. I shouldn't have come. I need to go back. Besides, he's... Stella! Siren's voice struck like lightning. You didn't come here. You were summoned. The council has agreed to give you a second chance. They sent me to tell you. I've respected your wishes to be left alone, have I not? You have, Stella looked down. But this is bigger than you and me. Stella, the lives of millions of children are at stake. It's up to you to set the record straight. The world is under a spell of illusion. They believe the biggest misconception that ever was. Everything is upside down and inverted. You need to undo it. How? Yelled Stella. You said it yourself. I'm the one who ruined everything. Why me? Because only you can rewrite the future. But first, you must recover what you left in the past. Stella, you're not here to save the world or even serve the council. You're here to illuminate the darkness that has blinded the world. You're here to shine your light. Shine bright, Stella, for all those still lost in the dark. Your story matters, now more than ever. Stella listened. I'm afraid. All the brave are, said Siren. You don't have to be ready. You just need to be willing. Are you willing? I am. And although she'd never felt worse, in that exact moment, Stella remembered. The first lesson from her submergence training from 3 years ago, lesson 1 of enchantment training is show up anyway. She stood, riddled with doubt and uncertainty, eaten up with anxiety and remorse, and weak from devastation, and said the 2 magic words that set all adventure on its course. Let's begin. Okay, I'm going to stop there for a moment to get some feedback, and then we can carry on. Okay, so what do you think?
I love it.
It's so exciting.
Okay, it's okay because yeah, it's weird. I mean, I don't read this out loud to anyone else, and I know this very well. So it's like I just want to get into the meat and potatoes of it, where it's like here's the stuff happening. But I wanted to start by setting the scene. Do you get that? Like it's fucked. Like things are bad.
I'm
Okay.
not sure yet though what point in the story we're at, which I think is probably a good thing. I think that's what you wanted.
Yeah,
But like, I don't know where in the whole scheme of everything we're supposed to be right now.
you're in the middle.
But are we supposed to know?
No, you're not supposed to know.
Right.
Well, you're not supposed. That's right. Like, what do you know? I mean, and also you can tell this is fairy tale. Like I'm writing. I'm not writing like an adult. I'm writing young. You know. What? Yeah. What do you? So you don't know where you are. What do you know by this point?
We know that she's super full of shame. She's super depressed.
Yeah.
She's like in a really dark place. And there's someone who's Siren, who is, I don't know if she's a mentor or a menace yet. I know because we talked about it, but we don't know if she's really good or bad.
Okay.
And I don't know yet if she's really telling the truth to Stella.
Okay. That's great. Yeah. Any other things that you got? And it can be good or bad. You can say if it's like, oh yeah.
I like the description of Sarah and like the way you introduced that character and like she just came off to me like this like Greek like this goddess, that like the sea goddess that just like came out, and she seems like she's some kind of mentor to Stella, and it's like I trusted her, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Stella should trust her, but I didn't even question that.
I love Siren, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, she seems awesome.
Yeah, okay, cool.
And it sounds like there's a really important mission that Stella is about to go on.
And is it obvious what's fucked, or is it not obvious? Is it obvious I'm talking about Cinderella?
No.
Oh, not?
Without
Okay.
that context, no. Without the context you started with by telling us, I don't think that part's obvious.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that's still okay because we don't know where we are in this whole story yet.
Okay.
And I think
Oh, it's the beginning, right?
Yeah, this is the first
But you know
beginning.
where it is chronologically.
Like, right, chronologically, we don't know where we are. Like, where does Cinderella fit into this yet? We're not sure.
I think for me, finding out that Cinderella is the Cinderella later is an aha moment. That is a preconceived story that I don't want to know about yet.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to know it's about Cinderella yet because I want to learn this and feel connected to this. And I can see it all the way into a Disney cartoon, all the way to like really intense theatrical performance with adult. Like you can see both in one person. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Like you can see a child cartoon and you can see an adult.
And can you see this world that I'm writing? Can you see these
Yeah.
people?
Very
Can you see
well.
what's happening?
Really
Okay.
well.
Okay.
Is,
Right.
Is it meant? I mean, because there are a lot of characters, but I'm assuming that in the subsequent chapters, it spells out exactly who these people are.
Yes.
So it's just you enter into this quagmire and then you're going to try and unpack that.
Yes.
Because
So this is like
I found it, I was
too many
kind of like,
things.
I mean, which is, I know the probably cadence of what you are trying to do, it's kind of like that kind of meta version of, just underpinning the enjambment of everything. But I was just trying to figure out, I couldn't really figure out who was who. For me,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Okay, yeah.
I'm below average intelligence.
No.
So-
That's great. Yeah, because like I want to go even faster. And what I've had to do is like, slow things down to go, okay, he has tote, he has
So
muscle.
I'm sure everyone's
Is
trying to
that
figure out who all these people are.
Yes.
And then you are attentive, so they factor the next ones.
yes, they come back. Yeah, like
Obviously, I mean, otherwise
And
they'll
their
get-
quirks and their persona.
yeah, like Tote and Muscle just carry her. Tote and Muscle does randos, but then Siren comes back a lot. Stella, obviously, and then there's this ominous force which you don't quite know what it is, but there's something waiting for her, but you don't know what that is.
Yeah, I would say like Tote and Muscle got finally could
Yeah, they're-
separate them, but
yes.
they kind of got a little fuzzy, but maybe
They-
my listening comprehension.
No, they should
sometimes
be
these
fuzzy.
things.
They are, because they're not even half real. Like they're made up. Like they're actually just fish that come to help her, but like they aren't even. So like if it's blurry, it's just like what the fuck's happening? It's like she doesn't know, you don't know, she's there. It's like wait, what? Like what? And now we're gonna start. And now it's like now we begin the story with Stella's 5. Like you literally meet Stella as a little baby. But it's like this, and this is also, all these things might move around. This was advice given to me by the screenwriter, and he's like, you need to start with devastation. On the hero's journey, like if you think of, what's that movie, the famous one, the Star Wars, when like it's burning, he's there, it's fucked, and it's like, you need to do this now. It's like the call to action for the hero. Like they're being summoned, like something's gonna happen, but they don't wanna go. So that's the setup.
Okay.
I get that.
I wonder if you could articulate what the devastation is outside their context that they're talking about more. Like, without mentioning Cinderella, but like a bird's eye view of, look at this, what's happening.
More.
Set the stage, yeah. Which
More
is
about
almost
what's
like
actually happening. And
yeah, like a prelude to that moment almost.
Because that's the creatures against each other fighting and tearing families apart. That's that part, but maybe more of
But it
that.
was just so brief. that
Okay.
it didn't I think you could have a whole nother animated monologue there.
So I think to connect you a little bit further to that, because
Mm.
while we, like on a deeper level, we're creatures that are fighting each other, but like you could make it probably more relatable.
Yes,
Like,
okay.
Something that's gonna pull you in and be like, oh, I know what that feeling is like,
Mm.
without being so on the nose about it, like Cinderella. But
More, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what I want to check also of like what's so obvious to me is maybe not obvious, because I feel everything I'm saying is so like it's so obvious that it's going to be like, what's the point? Like, yeah, but if it's not, then that's
That was
they're
almost
great.
too brief, and I think you could create a whole nother world that it's like, be a part of this world for 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is.
Okay, great. Okay.
is there a part to Stella that's like related to fire in some way? Because there's a lot of ash talk and if there is, definitely keep that going. My favorite thing that you said in this whole thing was you said she was a smudge against their brilliance, I think you said, and that's like such amazing imagery.
Yeah, I'm bringing in all her fire stuff because like, yeah, but like, yeah, that's great that that's already there because yeah, she's got, yeah. Okay, now we hear.
You retain a lot of information.
She's really taking it over.
It's too much.
You better not ever fuck around.
Yeah.
Fucking horse in your bed.
Shall we have a talk about
Can I just have a bit more?
Yeah.
This is what I'm good at.
Well, you can't put these.
Yeah, you good? Okay, good.
Student at heart.
Alright.
I love it. It's so great. Okay, now we're going to go back to the beginning. So now we're going to have a little story about Stella. We're going to meet her. She's 5 years old. All right.
This is chapter 3.
This is chapter 1. This is still chapter 1.
Oh, so it's full chapter 1.
Or like that's like it's like
But it starts
it's the
the way
pre
it is.
yeah, it starts and now it goes, let's begin.
Okay.
And now we begin.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. One day, Stella's life just started over. Up until then, she lived in the forest with her fairy mother, Cookie, and her witch father, Digby. Men can be witches too, don't you know? We can all be whatever we want to be, except tea. You can't be tea. Tea you can drink, said Digby, his morning blue eyes twinkling. Tea? I'll boil the cauldron, said Cookie, flashing her beaming smile at Digby as they erupted in laughter. It was always time for tea, until the day that it wasn't. Instead of coming home to singing teapots, clattering pans of tasty treats, and clanging pots of steaming saucers, Stella walked into silence. Her mother's face was tear-stained and strained white. Good news, Stella. We're going on an adventure. It's time to pack. Stella squished through a corridor of boxes to get to her room on the top floor of the forest treehouse. It was lush and green with leaves curling through every window. Built with twigs and branches, it centered around a large hollow opening inside the tree itself. The opening was the biggest room of the treehouse and doubled as a kitchen and living room. Stella's bedroom was up a sharp staircase alongside the pantry. In the pantry, Cookie stored bottles and jars of treats, herbs, and spices. The staircase smelled a different kind of delicious each time Stella climbed it, from freshly picked apples in woven baskets, to sweet citrus strained into canisters, to cinnamon sticks and containers of cloves. Home smelled like dessert. But matching the silence, today smelled of solitude. The staircase smelled of dust and emptiness. Except for a few trinkets and magical pieces, Stella's room was already all neatly packed. No one comes between a fairy witch and her magic, and even in this hurried escape, Cookie knew better than to meddle with her daughter's most treasured collectibles. Though she was only 5, Stella could always sense when things were serious. And unlike the usual chaos of conflict, today was strangely somber. Choosing to be sensible over sentimental, Stella pushed the confusion of the pack-up out of her mind. She focused on the task at hand. She picked up the empty box her mother had placed in the space where her bed used to rest, and gently put her last remaining items inside. The book of enchantment that her mother read to her before sleep, her collection of different size notebooks and color sticks to draw with, acorns she'd collected from the forest, gemstone crystals and charms, and her prized possession, her emerald amulet. There's no such thing as unhappy endings, only beautiful new beginnings. Cookie interrupted Stella's packing with her announcement. She set the tea tray down beside her daughter. Mom, will you tell me the emerald story? Cookie poured the lavender tea. Well, yes, I suppose there's always time for a little story. She handed a steaming cup to Stella and spoke these words. Your emerald amulet necklace was a birth from Siren, the sea witch. And when she gave it to you, well, the stone was bigger than your fist. When Siren gave it to you, she said, the fierce need protection too. And I thought that was a good one, although a baby is hardly fierce. Such a tiny little thing you were with your blue eyes. Mom, keep going with the story, said Stella. Yes. Siren uncurled your tiny fist and said, here's something to hold on to, or something like that. And whoa, you loved holding on to it. I let you keep it in your crib. You'd never let it go. Not really a toy for a baby, but it was dazzling. Like you couldn't help but notice it. It drew me in too, gleaming like polished ocean glass. Like Siren had sealed a piece of the green ocean with all the sea creatures and seaweed and coral and shipwrecks and buried treasures hidden beneath the surface. It mirrored your reflection, beckoning with the promise of another world, full of possibilities that didn't quite greet your eyes. And what happened when she gave it to me? Stella prompted. Oh yes. So she gave you the necklace, and after she did, she dipped your head backward to drink in the ocean. And then she said, whence we come till we return, the confirmation made to enchanted creatures. And your baby blonde hair turned eel black, and your blue eyes blinked emerald green. Snap, just like that. The waves crashed on the shore, thunderous in their applause, and I clapped too because it was very exciting. Your father cheered, loud as the waves. He was so proud of you. His hair was growing back because when you were born, he shaved it all off. All those lovely black curly locks, but he wanted to look like you. Bald, Cookie said. And you were quite bald. Her eyes softened, lost in memory. It's okay, Mom, said Stella. Oh yes, Cookie blinked. And just like that, your initiation into enchantment was complete. And when you're 13, you'll meet Siren again because she's your initiator and she'll do your training. And what does the clasp say? Pressed Stella. Engraved on the silver clasp, it says, more will be revealed. Okay, that's enough story for today. All packed and ready to go? Cookie stood dusting her apron. Let's get on with it, shall we? Night was falling and as the moon rose, Stella left her childhood home that she would never again return to. In a flurry of folding down and packing up, her once solid life was swept under a memory of something that wasn't anymore. It wasn't a secret why they'd left. Cookie was bursting with it. The burden of loving your father was unbearable. He was the most unapologetic creature impossible to live with. My wings couldn't take it. I was withering. What good is a fairy who can't fly? Simple is what Cookie wanted, yet complicated is what she married. And so she decided to swap better from worse and seize the chance for change. You see, tea wasn't the only liquid Digby gulped thirstily. Your father is bamboozled again. Your father is bamboozled again, shouted Cookie. Bleary-eyed, Digby looked up from all fours at Stella. I'm a seahorse stallion, and Stella is riding on my back, actually. He slurred. It's fun, Mom, said Stella. That's quite enough. Oh, groaned Digby, his seahorse strength fading fast as he stretched out on the squishy couch. I don't feel so good. Let your father rest, said Cookie. Bamboozle was made from fermented grapes. It was squished and ingested by the river serpents who squirted it out into silver troughs. Depending on what they'd eaten that day, you never quite knew what else was added into the spit mix. A plagued rat, a depressed possum, a felon squirrel. The river serpents were overworked and half-starved and would eat up anything sick and easy. These ingestions of the half-dead sustained them for their production schedule, but it polluted their juice output, which only made it more dangerously exciting to thrill seekers like Stella's father, Digby. Hello, come in. Hi, do you want to come in?
Thank you. I'm an artist. I was just browsing.
Oh, just doing a fairy tale reading if you want to come and listen.
Thank you. I just smelled the what's this?
It's incense.
Oh, okay, that's so cool. I'm so sorry for
No problem.
It's great. If you want, after you can come to my studio and
Awesome.
see my art.
Awesome. Thank you. That's great.
Thank you so much. Have fun.
Thank
Bye.
you. I never know what I'm good. But it polluted their juice output, which only made it more dangerously exciting to thrill seekers like Stella's father, Digby. I never know what I'm going to get. Sometimes it's a mellow buzz that soothes me from the inside out. Sometimes I feel melted from my toes to the tip of my head. And sometimes it's excruciating jitters that feel like termite stabs. Most unpleasant, but that's the risk you take. You just never know. It's a metaphor for life, the unexpected. Except it was very expected because bamboozle was what Digby drank every day. There was nothing novel about it. Stella knew her father by the stale smell of him. It lingered long after he was gone in forgotten places that once held promise, but now held dread. Every evening in a ritual sunset ceremony, Cookie sipped bamboozle with him. It's what you do when you love someone, she explained to Stella. You try to enjoy the things they do. Bamboozle was party juice for celebrations and sipped as the solution to sadness. Escape in a bottle, her father would say, removes reality and puts you in a new dimension. Except her father didn't fully disappear. He just faded into the blurry in-between space of here and gone. Looking at Digby after drinking was like looking at a transparent shadow ghost. He was there, but not quite. Stella couldn't walk through him, but he seemed far away, even when he sat buried in cushions on his corner couch. She missed him, even when he was in the room beside her. It was the idea of him, but the real him was faded away. But by mid-morning, he'd be back again in full twinkle, and the nights were all but forgotten. And now the missing would be real, because her father wouldn't be there at all. Cookie moved Stella to the shrubbery with her parents, Bumble and Wilt. Just till my winds get their strength back, she said, adding, nothing is changing, it's all staying exactly the same. No interruption to the routine. Crates and containers of their things stacked high on the enclosed balcony, lining the front of the Creek residence. When Cookie tucked Stella into her new bed that nightfall, she promised that soon she'd build her a brand new, beautiful home in the rose garden. I promise, Stella, nothing will change. Stella wanted to believe her mother, but already everything was different. I'm just going to pause. Oh no, I'll read 2 more parts and then we'll stop. Bumble and Wilt's shrubbery home was at the bottom of the grove in a cul-de-sac of pine trees, deep inside the enchanted forest and far from the beach cove at its border. The floor outside was all pine needles. The firs stretched up, disappearing into the white sky. All the colors of the rainbow combined into a brilliant bright light that wrapped the sky in a thick blanket of soft, luminous white. Theirs was the North Star Kingdom in the multiverse and was said to be the brightest of all. By light, Stella explored the forest, making her way through the cool shade of fir trees and making friends with all sorts of forest creatures. In the North Star Kingdom, the creatures were all made up of a myriad of different creatures. Everything and everyone was mixed with a little that, everything and everyone was a little mixed with a little that. Not just one thing, and the only thing that was purely what it was nothing itself. Stella's grandmother Bumble was part fairy bee, her grandfather part wizard wasp, which gave Stella some zing and zap, which would prove very useful in her magical powers. When you're 13, you'll start your training, said Cookie. But for now, baby steps for babies. Okay, I'll stop there. Okay, what do you think?
Oh, I love it.
Okay, good. I mean, you don't have to say, I was like, what do you think? Like, tell me you like it, but you can also say what you think.
I love the characters. I love the mom, Cookie, the mom and dad are so cute, and the bamboozle, and I think it's a really nice, fresh, like, start, and it's very descriptive and very, like, magical, and
Okay, good. So you can see that world. You can see that.
very clearly.
It really is. You paint a very visceral. It's really amazing.
Okay, good. And do you relate to any of these? Like, do you recognize a Cookie or a Digby or a Stella? Like, do you know this type of thing?
I mean, Cookie is like a 1950s housewife, right? Like, she's like, everything's right, everything's fine, he's drunk in the corner, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
It's fine, you're fine, everything's normal. Like,
Yeah.
I would agree, absolutely. And it's interesting because I even had senses like of smell,
Mhm.
even though
The
I
staircase.
yeah, the staircase, and then like even texture and feeling the necklace and looking at it and the enchanted, like that moment of it. So it's kind of cool because it ties in a lot of sensory elements to the story, which I think probably tie into your character.
Yeah.
Also, you did it a couple of times in this, you did it once in the first one, but this one you said something about melting, and normally you think about melting as top to bottom, but you said melting from your toes to his nose or something like that. It's a backwards way of thinking of melting, but in this world,
Everything's,
what a perfect way to describe it.
yeah, everything's kind of, a lot of, this is a lot of magic is inversion. So a lot of things are
Yeah.
backwards and top to, yeah, inside out.
So it's a very cool way to describe melting, so.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so before I go to the next part, because I'd just like to because I know I was also reading this super fast, can you tell me, like, if you had to tell me what happened, what was this about?
Sorry, I'm sorry, one thing that I just wanted to ask you about, because I might not have understood it, but you described her hair, she dipped her head back in the ocean and she went from blonde to black hair. But then you said the dad shaved his head because he wanted to be like her, which was bald.
When she was born.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. His hair was growing back already because she like, you know, now she was like in that thing, but yeah, yes. So she would have had like a little bit of baby hair, but yeah, good. Yeah. No, it's good. Yeah.
That's all.
So what, can you tell me what happened? Like, what was this part about?
The divorce.
Yeah.
I think it gives you a basis for what she.
I didn't realize they're like leaving the dad, and that makes sense, but I just, like, they were leaving, the mom told her to pack her bags, and they're leaving to this other kind of magical land and trying to make it like, oh, it's gonna be a new exciting adventure, but it was really kind of sad, she's like leaving her childhood home.
Yeah. So there's divorce, and is it obvious that it's like, he's he's drunk all the time?
Yeah.
Because the story is about addiction. I mean, the whole story is about addiction, you know, like that's the whole theme.
Well,
But
her family is giving her a falsified sense of reality and saying like, this is normal, this is okay, don't look over here, look over here. Like, that's the goal, don't look back at what's going on in reality. So I think it sort of sets the stage for what she thinks is normal when she's realizing probably that like, maybe this isn't so perfect.
yeah, so what I want to establish with this is what sets the conditions for shame? What sets the conditions for a secret keeper? Because Stella's going to have a secret, a very bad secret that she can't share, and she's going to carry the secret. But what would make someone keep a secret? What would make someone not feel safe to say the truth or to, it's like, so I want to take like real, I mean, because also the story is just my whole life. Like, it's just, you know, like it's all just very much just me, you know, and this is also the thing with writing this, like all the characters are make believe except for Digby, which is like my actual dad. Like all of them are like, you know, but I'm like, Digby could keep his actual name because like, I didn't really know my father that much. So I get to make him up as I imagine he felt like, but I don't really know this, you know? So before this, I'd only read this to like my one cousin, older cousin from my dad's side who did know him because we were very estranged from that family. And she was like, oh, that's so your dad. But I mean, I don't know. Like, I just guess like, you know, what he could be like. 15.
But isn't it interesting that you nailed it without really knowing?
Well, just nail an addict. I mean, then you got it. Yeah, yeah.
I
So
thought it was interesting, the stuff that her mother wouldn't touch. I thought that was a really maybe pivotal nugget in the story of her and Stella, and like the why behind it, or the methodical way that I don't know all the things there. I mean, some of them, but that she just left that. She took care of everything else besides
yeah,
whatever
because
that was, and that whatever that is interesting.
one of the philosophies that, so I read you a bit more because I wanted you to know like how this land looks, what the sky looks like how the timing works, because there's certain things that are different to like our reality. And one of the things which we get to in the Book of Enchantments, where she starts to study, is that in the North Star Kingdom, like the philosophy is that every creature gets parents, but they are not your providers. Like you're born, that's it. So like it's like, this is a community-based thing. They take care of each other, they're trained, but like your parents don't protect or provide for you. That's only a bonus. So there's a lot of independence, and a lot of the characters in this are abandoned children or neglected, or like they have to fend for themselves. Like you're learning from a very young age to become very adult and do a lot of like, they're not babies, even though they're little, they're not really that little.
There's no coddling going on.
No, they're an independent person. Like they get on with things because there's no time for that. So like her cousins, because I'm not going to read you that part. Her or let me ask. Can I just? Oh, sorry, I'm like just talking so much because I like want to read you the entire story in one go. But yeah, any other reflections on this part or feedback?
What was your question that you asked us just before? Would you see?
Like, yeah, do you relate to any parts of the character, or do you know what's going on? You know, there's divorce. You know, there's addiction.
We know they're moving somewhere. Like we don't know what's happening yet, but they're moving on from something.
Probably the alcoholic dad, like you can kind of like picture what that's like, and that was like relatable in a sense, like, okay, I know how this is, like at first it was like, oh, he's like likes his bamboozle and stuff, and then I was like, oh no, this is like kind of not a good situation.
I also think Stella is perceived as somebody who's very self-aware of what's going around, even though she might not be able to articulate what's happening. It's like I'm watching through like a lens or a video processing in front of me. You know, like she knows, okay, this is happening around her. We have to move. It's not good and it's not bad, but we're moving. And I'm perceiving and
I'm not sure this is it was your intent, but you don't think that the description of Digby is at odds with, because there's a very angelic side of it where he's trying to mimic his daughter with the hair and the whole thing, and then it kind of just almost sweeps to this stench of him, whatever, when he, kind of, it just, is it meant to, I mean, I understand for obvious reasons if it's being looked at from a child's perspective, you're going to have both of those feelings and be at odds with each other based on this overshadowing.
Yeah,
I mean,
I like that.
It just seems like it's too much, like, because, with characters, it's almost like, everyone's got suspension of disbelief when you're watching anything, just whatever film or you're reading a book, whatever, but you can almost immediately identify, there's something that just is that you don't like about that character.
Yes.
Very early on, it's almost telegraphed, like there's something that's at odds with the status quo of what you would envisage reading with someone that's decent. So I just want to know if that was intentional or if it's, because it just seemed like it was just
seemed too strong,
just
yeah.
a flick of a switch, like again, he was, I was thinking like, how come, I don't know, maybe there was.
So he's also like another favorite character to write. Like he's very delightful to Stella. She like loves it, but it's also, there's almost like a poke every now and again. Like I could say sweet stale smell of him, but it's like he's there and he's not, but he's also, when he's there, it's like she's obsessed with him. Like he's her best, like he is, and he is, and that's the confusion of the character where like he'll shave his head and he'll be there and then he's just like not there. And then it's like, he's amazing. And then it's like, so like, it's setting up that disorganized attachment where it's like Cookie's in love with him too. It's like, you can't not love this character because he's so funny and great, but like, there's like, it's problematic. Then like it just goes out sideways and then it comes back to amazing, but like, you can never feel safe.
Maybe he's like polar with the
Yeah.
addiction issues.
Yeah.
That's usually how it is, right? With like some people like that, they're usually have this really charming side and then this other side that
Yes.
it's not.
And that comes out a lot with him. Like he's amazing and then mean.
like a spell of love, like, oh, these bubbles from the bamboozle and this magical moment of innocence. And then it slips into something else.
Yeah.
And then, him disappearing into the couch and moments like that you articulate are like forgivable because of that sweet side of him. Then
Yes.
well, we can forget that happened because he certainly forgot it,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
It's like, well, let's just live in the now where he's here and he is present and forget that stuff happened because he did.
Yeah. Jamie, are you okay?
I'm good.
Okay. Is it not just too like, what the
I'm
fuck?
gearing up for something which is obvious.
Yeah.
Which, I just love kind of watching you get into it. 'Cause it's so obviously your story that you wrote and you're so into it and I love watching it.
Yeah, no, I'm really into the story. That's the problem. That's why I'm like, oh God, I'm too into it.
It's super cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to skip and I would like to do one final part, which I haven't actually read. I don't think I've read this part to anyone yet. So I'll tell you what you're missing in a nutshell, so what happens there? So in the next scene, so mom's like, she's always like, when you're 13, like you're going to get trained then. So the bulk of this book, like she gets trained. The magic is amazing and you learn all the magic with her and it's cool. But Stella's now living with her grandparents and she's exploring the forest and she makes a group of forest friends. And this is where you meet, like, they're gender neutral. One's half a rabbit and it's a mole and they're funny. And Stella's practicing magic with them. Like, it's very sweet. They're so encouraging to Stella. And she's always trying to like do spells way ahead of her time. Like, just wants to, and her mom's like, geez, like, calm down. You're going to get there. Not yet, but she's playing with her friends.
What's the Cinderella thing? I mean,
way later.
It's way later.
And the Cinderella scene, you don't even see it. You see her going and she comes back. It's got very little, it's all about Stella.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is really cool because you want to learn that new fairy tale.
Yeah, this is a whole new fairy tale. It's like, I want little girls to be like, I'm Stella. Like, fuck Cinderella. Like, Cinderella's like, she just literally doesn't even make an appearance. It's the catalyst for this story. Like, how do you become magic? How do you, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think you read us this, but the difference between her playing with her friends in the forest and this kind of, it wasn't heavy the way you read it, but like the content's kind of heavy. Her parents are getting divorced, her dad's an alcoholic, they're leaving their house. That seems not very adolescent, and she's older now in the section you're talking about, and it seems more adolescent, which is kind of fun.
Oh, well, she's still 5. She hasn't become 8 yet. This is the end of the 5. I'm just not reading it because I just want to get to the drama. Like, there are lovely parts to this, like where it's just the story and you learn and you discover the kingdom, but like, I just want to get like into the, like,
she wants to get
I'm like, I just want to tell you what happens before Cinderella. Oh my God. Like, it just gets like, imagine writing a character is so delightful and then you just fuck her up. And like everything you think is like, you just fucking go. And it's just like, it's just devastating to write, but it's also in between, there's all the delight.
Very general in terms of everyone could relate to something or a family or a friend or something that's similar.
Good.
It's a well-known dynamic. And it's like, okay, we go and that happens.
Well, I think the most successful people that I've ever met who are exceptional come from something's fucked, something's off. And it's like, how do you it's like, you're just different. So I want to try and set that up that everyone can feel that part in them. But okay, so they think she's magical. Cookie says, I'll read the last sentence. Life was gentle and easy, like the calm before a storm comes crashing in. But the winds of change were blowing in the distance, and soon they'd grow to a howling gale force. By the time Stella was 8, they'd swept her right off her fairy witch feet all over again. So she has a little reprieve, like you meet her, it's kind of nice. And then she meets Mum Frog. And now Cookie has moved into the beautiful pink place and she meets this repulsive ogre called Mum Frog. And he's got 2 disgusting rat children, Beastie and Egypt, with thick, waxy rat tails, and they're the fucking worst.
This is your mother.
This is the great thing why my family doesn't read anything I write, because I'm like, well, it's fine. They won't. They don't watch me, they don't write. I mean, like, I can do whatever I want. But yeah, it's extreme. Cookie starts dating. She's obsessed with this ogre. He's vile. Stella's like, what the actual fuck? Like, what do you, like, can you not see? Like, do you need new glasses again? Like, what's going on? Like it's.
That would be a great scene where she picks up glasses to be like, no.
Yeah, because Cookie's got new glasses before. Cookie's got a thing with her eyes. So like, yeah. So she thinks that. So Mum Frog is revolt. The scene with Mum Frog, he's just, oh my God, it's a whole thing of meeting him and his, and then they start to date. Stella's alone, and we also meet Stella. This was also true, which is funny. Stella then starts to spend time, because her mother's now dating and gallivanting. Stella spends time with her 3 orphan cousins, and they live in an abandoned puppet warehouse on the rocks on the shore. And this feeds in later to another part of it. But her 3 cousins, both their parents are dead, and they live in this like warehouse place, the big bonfire, and creatures come at night, they play music, and Stella hangs out there, but it's also like kind of like the Lost Boys, like, that kind of vibe, everyone's lost. And Digby like stays there when he's not partying. He also hangs out there. So Stella sees him with them. When he's around, it's all very like loose, but it's kind of a cool vibe, like it's kind of nice. There's trees and a trampoline, and there's cousins, and they grow silkworms, and they have parties, and it's a vibe.
Awful, that's nice.
Huh?
That's like awful, that's nice.
Yeah, like awful, but it's kind of nice, yeah. And Digby can be cool. Stella spends more time alone. And then Cookie says, actually, she's marrying Mum Frog. Actually, great news. We're moving to the cave, and you're gonna, you're gonna live with these two rats in their cave. And they go there, and there's this tiny little balcony off the daughter, Beastie, off her bedroom. There's a little balcony, and they put twigs on it, and they put Stella there, and she lives on the little balcony strip, and that's her bedroom. And Stella like can't sleep, and it's like this. It's just not cool. Like it's just this terrible environment. So she escapes one night, slides out, and is just trying to get some fresh air in the dark. And she hears this voice by the cliff. So she comes out her window. There's like a cliff, and she hears the sound, and it's like a stranger in the dark. So she goes up to her, and that's where she meets Belle. And Belle comes from the Tinker family in the middle of the forest to make a huge noise and need some peace and quiet because she's got to think. And Stella meets Belle, and Belle's her best friend, and Belle's obviously Tinkerbell. And she meets her in the dark. And this beautiful friendship develops when Stella wants to save other little lost girls in the dark who are looking for a peace and quiet. And so Belle's like, I'm going for the boys, give me lost boys. And it's like starts of like, they're going to go, that's what they're going to be doing together. So she's like mesmerized by Belle, who's just feisty and kind of mean, but like she's like a tricksy little fairy, the pixie, So they become best friends, which, huh? No, there's no business. And Stella visits her dad. She tells her dad their mom's getting married, which is not cool, but the dad's just a bit delusional. She hangs out with Belle. They start studying the Book of Enchantments. So then 3 years pass. So now we're getting into like the thick of it. Now and Belle and Stella are best friends, and they start to study together, and you start to learn about the kingdom and the philosophy, and you're reading the Book of Enchantments with them. And Belle's more interested in boys all the time and having babies and breeding, and thinks Stella's very boring because Stella wants to learn about dogs and other animals that they don't have. And, and Belle's parents are very sweet and start to worry a little bit about, this is also alluding to Peter Pan because, they're tinkers, so they're fitting pots to pans, and Belle's parents are madly in love. And like every time her dad fits a lid to the pot, and the mom's like, Pan man, and like they like all obsessed. And Belle's like, what the fuck, this is disgusting. Like who would want like a Pan man? Obviously she's going to fall in love with Peter Pan. So it's like all set up. It's like everything's coming, like it all links back. And Belle kind of thinks Egypt with a thick tail is kind of cool because he's tall, and Stella's disgusted. Like, why is just Belle's into just boy, can't stop with boys? And then what happens? This is when the witching thing comes in. Stella's walking back one night with a pot of replenishing soup that Belle's parents have made. They're like, we're worried about your dad. Like, he's not looking good. Take this replenishing pot, give it to your father. Like, someone needs to be feeding him. Like, no, who's taking care of this man? Like, he's just wandering around. Like, and Stella is walking through the forest, and you meet like a coven of witches, and she watches and she sees a witch ritual, and they spot her, and it's like they know there's witch in Stella from her father, because Stella's not just fairy, there's also a witch there. And she meets this little girl who comes out, who's been like watching her, and there's this character who's introduced who Stella needs to meet again, but she's got to go home. Like, but there's something, and she leaves the pot of replenishing soup by accident, that's for her father, and goes up home. And when she crosses the threshold back to her home, she starts to hear like huge yelling, and now something's going on. And she recognizes the voice of her father, who's now come to see her mother. And so it's like, I've done this extremely fast, but you get where we are at. Okay. So I would like to read you this. Are you good for that? Need to stretch, turn around, go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
No? Fine? Okay. Okay.
Which chapter is this now?
Chapter 3. Lost in memory, Stella continued home much later than usual. I can't get a word in sideways, erupted the yell. She heard their shouting before she even saw the cave. Stella strained to make out the rest of the rumbled words, but she knew exactly who they belonged to. Dad? She raced up the winding cliff path. Oh no, the soup. Well, fuck that. Let's just go back. It was pitch black. She knows. Something must be very wrong. It was pitch black as Stella crossed the threshold into the reverberating cave. Relieved they had no neighbors to hear the ruckus, Stella was still deafened by the yells. Mum Frog had taken Egypt on an adventure to get prank equipment, and Beastie had tagged along, so Digby had been unusually allowed inside the cave. His luminous sea green cape lay tossed over a kitchen stool, and he'd unbuttoned his billow shirt down to his navel. In contrast, Cookie wore a neck bow, apron, and string of pearls around her neck, which she fidgeted with as she seethed, glowing from tomato to beetroot in color. Never in my life have I met a witch with so much potential who just squandered it all away with nothing to show for it. Nothing to show. What do you call Stella, my pride and joy? A great success by every stretch of the imagination. Digby spun around, gestating wildly. We did that together, Cookie, but I'm sure you'll take all the credit for that. Sorry, I don't know why I think it's so funny. I'll just calm down. Sorry, I can't get to it. Where do you think she gets her magic from? It's hardly born of bee. Don't you talk about my mother like that. Please stop. Stella's yells sliced the tension, thick with stale love and brewing contempt. Cookie and Digby swanning around simultaneously, exhausted and pale. Oh, Stella, I didn't want you to see any of this upset, spilled Cookie. As long as it looks good, we're okay, shot Digby sarcastically. She needs to know what's happening. It doesn't matter if I see it or not, said Stella. I can hear it. And what is happening anyway? Is everything okay, Dad? Stella stepped toward her dad and took his hands in hers. His blue eyes filled with yearning. Oh, Stella, won't you bring your old man a bottle of boozle? He cleared his throat. All the shouting, I'm parched. And one for your mom, okay? He nodded in Cookie's direction. Fine, she sighed. The moment Stella stepped out into the entrance hall, into the corridor, to the kitchen, they exploded again, and Stella could hear every single word as she walked to the ice cooler to collect the bamboozle bottles for her parents. Could you be any more obvious, Cookie hissed. I'm serious, Cookie. I may not have long to live. It's real this time. Sorry about that. I can't turn this off. So our lives finally settle back down and you conveniently start to die. Cookie, come on. I'm spontaneously dying. It wasn't planned. And I'm glad you agreed. Your life went downhill after you married that mumfig. Mumfrog, snapped Cookie. Oh, how you love to twist my words. We settled up after all the years circling the drain with you, where I just wasted away. Cave-bound is an upgrade. You were free with me, Cookie. Now you're just boring, like your parents. I will not bring my parents into this. My daughter needs a father, she hissed. No, not only were you too busy gallivanting with giants and frolicking with the fairies, while I had to cook and clean, but now that she's a growing creature, you're just going to go and die on her. This is ridiculous. I won't have it. It's hardly my fault I'm dying. You think you'd show some remorse, take pity on your old husband, but no, not Queen Cookie. Well, I'm sorry we all can't live and die on your schedule, Cookie. He drained the last of his boozle. Thank Ocean I have this drink to keep my tiny heart afloat upon the sea of agony my life has bestowed upon me. If only you knew the suffering I've had to endure. There he goes again, always the victim. Dad, are you dying? Stella rushed back from the kitchen and handed the bottle to her father. Quite right, Stells. He took a long gulp. I'm dying. And you would think it would make your mother show me some compassion, but no! You know, it's not all about you, Cookie. I'm the one dying here. Oh, Dad, Stella hugged him. Now look what you've done, yelled Cookie. Digby peeled Stella off. Hey, Stells, no biggie. I mean, yes, they say I'm dying, but what do wizards know, hey? Oh, so now you're not dying. Is that right? Said Cookie. I'm dying, Digby yelled. Dad, are you or aren't you? Cried Stella. It's hard to say, honey. Digby took a sip, avoiding her gaze. Just say the truth, Stella asked. Ha, your father and the truth aren't related, said Cookie. Stella's head spun. Their words blurred together as Digby explained, and Cookie threw insults until one struck. Ow, that hurt, Cookie. You're a cruel and malevolent witch, Digby. Can you spell what you speak, Cookie? You don't have the smarts. Stella gagged on her own fear. She may threw up. She ran toward the door to get out. Digby was dying. His heart was shrinking, and it would be the death of him, they said. Had she really heard it all correctly? Stella shrunk out of the house to disappear into the forest and clear her head, swimming with her father's suffering and buzzing with her mother's anxiety. Her heart thumped. While his heart shrinks, mine will explode, she thought. Tears choked her, and she felt the gripping panic of hyperventilation. There was only one creature who could take her troubles away, a creature who would distract her from her misery by focusing the attention onto herself. Missed me? Said Belle, appearing out of thin air on cue. Fairy friends were known for their telepathy and teleportation. My dad has a shrinking heart. He's dying. Oh, great oceans below and endless skies above. Belle flushed her hand to her forehead and fainted backwards. She crawled along the forest floor, her right arm reaching with fingers grasping at the empty space ahead. Will he go like this, panting like a puppy? She clutched her throat, gagging and gulping with her tongue out. Will he splutter and choke with his final joke? What did the Bernarda say to the fish? She called into a ball on her left, or wither into a tiny acorn, or used and shriveled up. Will he? Shh, parroted Stella. Don't shush me, I wasn't quite done, actually. Hello? Stella caught in a trance-like blank stare. She wasn't looking out so much as she seemed to be looking in, teletransported someplace else. Snap! Belle snapped her fingers in front of Stella's face and cleared her throat. As I was saying, but Stella stood to leave. There's something when you just said, her voice trailed off. With her hands on her hips, Belle tapped her foot, annoyed. The tinkling bells on her shoes brought Stella back to her. I'm sorry, Belle, I have to go. And called out over her shoulder, she added, Thank you, Belle, you're the best. Satisfied, Belle said, Thank you, I know, bowing to her imaginary fans before twirling into light and vanishing with a twinkle. Stella smiled. There was something in the S. If you could just see without your eyes, if she could summon all the magic already inside of her, maybe she had what it took to stop her father from dying. Maybe she'd be the one to save him. She turned on her heel and raced back toward the house. A plan was forming fast, and it may just work. The screaming match had settled, and Stella walked into both her parents silently sipping their bamboozle, facing opposite directions. Dad, I'll walk you out. Cookie, deflated, lowered her eyes. I'm so sorry, Stella. I'll go put the kettle on. I'm sorry too, Stella, said Digby. I forget you're a witchlet sometimes. I think you're fully grown, and well, I forget myself. A shrinking heart. It's just all very unpleasant, isn't it? It's all right, Dad. I have an idea. An idea? Well, I'd love to hear it. How about a moonlit jaunt on a lily pad, just you and me, or maybe a midnight stroll by the ocean? There's actually a mermaid I'd like you to meet. Nothing serious, but you know, she's a good laugh, great tale. He spilled his sip. Oopsie, silly me, and hiccuped. Well, maybe let's just stick with tomorrow, actually. All this talk of my imminent death has exhausted me. I think I may need to lie down for a while. Sure, you understand. It's not you. It's just, he yawned and hiccuped again. I'm so damn sleepy. Good night, Dad. Sleep sweet. I'll tell you my idea tomorrow. And don't worry about dying. You're definitely not going to. I'm going to fix it for you. I bet you will, you magical miracle, you. Sounds like a great plan. Here's to life. He cheered to the moon. Hee-hee, see you tomorrow, Ella Ray. After sweet honey tea, Stella fell sound asleep, her tummy filled with the loveliness of likelihood. What? With the loveliness of the likelihood, and her heart content with conviction. She would save her father from his shrinking heart. Digby wouldn't die because she could help it. Still awake? Whispered Cookie, her head poked in from Beastie's room. Wide awake, Mom. Stella sat. But don't worry. I really think I can fix this. I've been thinking and, oh, Stella. Cookie slumped as she sat on the edge of her bed. Her feet swung, not touching the floor. I used to think a lot too, but it's very overrated. Baking is better than thinking. Sweet treat? She passed Stella a chocolate fudge brownie with gold dust sprinkles, shards of vanilla frosting, and a swirl of caramel sauce. She dusted the flour from her own cheek and said, You can't fix your father, because if you could have by now, you already would have. And well, you haven't actually. You actually didn't fix him at all. Cookie flashed Stella a glare, which disappeared as she swallowed a brownie bite. What are you saying? Stella asked. I'm saying, Cookie swallowed. What I'm saying, you're not giving me a chance. Her eyes welled with hot tears. I'm sorry, Mom, I'm listening, said Stella with full intent. I met your father the day I enrolled in Dress Design Academy at the inaugural class. I spotted him first, the most daring fashionista I've ever set eyes on before. He had a long black dress with a tall pointed hat covering a mop of tousled black curls. He wore knee-high purple pointed boots, so dashing and confident. Digby, darling, he drawled, extending his ringed fingers. I saw you looking. He winked those sky blue eyes and waltzed away. His spiderweb train sashayed behind him. He was everything my father wasn't, and that just made him all the more thrilling. But there was something about those eyes, that twinkle. I saw you in them. I thought to myself, that creature will make my baby. And he did. Too full of memory, Cookie shook her head. But marriage made him mad. And it's not like my mother didn't warn me. He announced our engagement on my 21st birthday and Bumble burst into tears. Terrible. He wore a green velvet dress. We both did. And Bumble said, he's not right in the head, that witch. Then he made me take my once, twice more before we married. He said escape is the essence of magic and wanted to be sure I'd escaped enough. But I didn't want to escape at all. I just wanted, well, it doesn't matter now, does it? Cookie dusted her apron. It does matter. Please tell me more, Mom, Stella encouraged. What I'm saying is that my mother warned me about your father, and now I'm warning you. Now I'm warning you. You can't save a creature like that, Stella. I thought if I just loved him more, it would be enough. And then I thought, I know what to do. A baby would work. A baby would do the job I couldn't. Surely a baby would be enough to settle him for a while. But then, what baby? Me? Stella asked, confused. I had you to save him from his self-destruction, and you couldn't, Stella. You didn't save your father. Cookie gasped and clasped her hand over her mouth. Stella stared, shocked and terrified. She could hear her mother's heartbeat. The silence lingered. I was just too small then. I didn't know how. Tentative, Stella pushed on. But I can now. I will, I promise. Cookie snapped. His shenanigans got worse. Look at him. And now he's dying. Mom, I'm bigger and I'm better, and so I'll make it better, I promise. She started to cry. I already tried that, Stella, and you didn't. Cookie wept, caught in the web of her failed plan, and hopped off the bed with a thump. Mom, I will, Stella insisted. Cookie buzzed toward the door and spun back dramatically. Just leave him alone. It's better if he's dead. He's an embarrassment. Imagine him lurking outside the parties you'll go to when you're older, flirting with your friends. The way he's going, he'll have no talent left to trade with, and he'll be begging for scraps on the shore with the seagulls. You didn't save him, Stella. You couldn't. Now go to sleep and just forget about him. He left long before he started dying. She slammed the double doors and the small room shook. Stella's eyes locked onto the door frame, frozen. She picked up her only pillow, pressed it over her face, and screamed. Wow, that's so intense. Okay, so I'll just stop. I'm like, fuck, what a scene. Okay, that was a lot. Maybe I'll just stop there for tonight. No, I'm like, oh, it's so mean, that poor little girl. Okay.
Oh my God.
I want you to read what Stella does, but that was really intense. I'm just going to take a moment and have a sip of kombucha. Sobriety. Okay. Yeah, any thoughts?
That's a different cookie.
Is it too much, or what do you think of?
No, it's not too much. I think it's like I don't think we got the first image of like the staircase smelling all these different ways and everything is great and don't look over here and everything is wonderful and let's move along, was like the facade that we got of Cookie, and now we're getting like Cookie. Like we're getting the down and dirty Cookie, and kind of understand why she's pretending to shield Stella from all that stuff, but also like, damn dude, that's heavy, like for an 8-year-old or whatever she's supposed to be. For a kid,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
But I also think it's very real.
Yeah.
What kids are going through.
I think Cookie resents Stella. And I think
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like she actually so there's that dynamic set up where I think a lot of people have children to save their marriage and then it doesn't. And then they're like, what the fuck? Like now.
And no one really talks about that.
Right.
So it's like drawing attention to, I thought you didn't.
Yeah, it kind of sets the stage just for like how you mentioned earlier, this reality with Stella, and like it's just like she has so much responsibility at like 8 years old, that like she was supposed to save her father when she was a baby. Now she thinks she's supposed to save her father now at 8 years old, trying to save this like 45-year-old man probably that should figure it out for himself. It's like that's she's got the weight of the world on her shoulders. And that you could see how that would set the stage for like a lot
Problems.
of complications later on.
Well, I think it's just brilliant. Seriously.
Do you like it?
It's,
Okay.
it's amazing. I mean, I really think you can have all the success with this. I think it's great.
It's very engaging.
Okay,
Really
good.
pulls you in.
No, it's amazing. I think it's just incredible.
There's just so much of the story. It
Well,
just goes
and
on
if-
and on.
If you're thinking as a cartoon, adults get it, kids can feel it. Or sense
Yes.
it. If that makes sense, and you tell both stories together.
Am I correct in saying that for those of us that came, it's 15% of like J.K. Rowling's
Yeah.
going forward? Because I'm saying that's what I
And
read.
maybe-
Since
Yeah.
we came,
Yeah.
the rest of the time.
No, I know.
It's us.
Oh no, there'll be big rewards. If anything ever happened, because my dream with this is that this is a mixture between Harry Potter and Wicked.
Well,
Like that's the
fine.
genre. So yes,
I did
there'll be
mention it.
yeah.
I'm saying she is the richest woman in Britain. I'm saying
Yeah,
15%.
yeah. We'll have a lot of celebrations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're very smart. And
I love this.
maybe you should have almost 17.5.
Yeah.
We'll take 50.
That's fine.
Well, this is why, like, all I want to do is write this all the time. Obviously, I have to run a business and like make money and pay for rent, but all I would like to fucking do is write fairy tales all day long. And
You're very good at it. That's really
thanks.
Yeah.
This is much easier writing for me than obviously business writing. Like that's a struggle, but this is like it comes out fully formed because I feel like I know, like it just feels like I'm remembering something that's true, not that I'm making it up. I'm just like remembering it.
I feel that. Like,
Yeah, and
it feels
it's-
like there's like a strong vision and like you had the story inside you and just wrote it all out. Like it's really.
I mean,
cool.
if you think about it, how many, again, whether it's the kids, whether it's an adult, I mean, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, maybe it's meant to be this oscillation.
Yeah.
But I mean, how many of these, they're pretty unique. I mean, if you think about it.
I hope so. Yeah.
If you think about Harry Potter can be watched by kids as well as adults.
Right.
I wanted a fairy tale for me now, but me now would have needed this as a kid too.
Yeah,
So,
but
like,
it's also
yeah.
nice, it's a guide to the next type of situation for kids as well that can identify 70% of the
Yes.
marriages and divorce, and then you've got addiction, you've got mental health issues, and then you're going to go with this whole poly, trans, gender fluid, whatever amoeba is going to be in the forest or whatever it is.
Yeah. I want, when parents read it, I want it to be healing for them, and I want it to be healing for the kids who like read it, that they're not
And
alone
you can
with
really
this.
you can picture the like disgusting stepfather type thing, and the way the mom's like sold out and she can't believe it, and the dad, is filled with promise and all the rest of it. I'm assuming it would be something to engorge his heart or something. I would assume in the book.
Well, this is the last part. So this is, I mean, can I do one more part?
Yes.
Okay, this is because I know I'm going on.
Chapters are planned in the book.
No, there's 13. We were at the beginning. Like this. I want to get to the
And you guys
secret.
fucking listen until the sun comes up.
No.
So weird. Lauren,
No.
over.
No. Okay, there's one part, and this will be the last 15 minutes. This will be the last 15 minutes, and then it's done. Because I just wanted to get you the meats of it. And the one thing I want to share before I tell you the spell, because Sita wants to save her father. So let's get to what she does, because this becomes her secret. Like, she can't practice magic. She's not ready to be trained. Like, that's been set up a lot, but fuck it. She's going to do what she wants. Are you okay with it?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, top up, have.
Finish the bottle.
Let me light one more piece of incense also.
This is really good though. Like,
Yeah, it really seems to come very naturally for you.
You guys,
It's brilliantly written. Okay, we're not judging. Sister wife says you're fine.
I'd like to share one thing of where the story came from before I read you the spell. So it's obvious that it's like my story. I think that's obvious. I've told you so. But where this came from was that scene you just heard, like when I knew that was real. That's where the story was born. I went to Mexico, like in the middle of the pandemic. I got back with this ex-boyfriend who's been like the most tumultuous relationship of my entire existence. Like, just fucked me up, like beyond, like really bad. And we were in Mexico, so now we're together. I've met his father. This guy grew up in a cult, a sex cult that he escaped. Great documentary, I highly recommend it. And
he's in the subject of documentary.
he made the documentary. That's how I found him. Yeah.
Which one was he in?
It's called Children of God. Yeah, it's very intense. Children of God, Lost and Found. Such a good movie. Anyway, the wild thing is of meeting him, how I met him on it's a whole thing. Of all the people in the world, this guy's father left the cult and moved to Durban, Umhlanga, and his brother went to Northwood, and the sister, and like, they're the same. And I met his father. It was like meeting a guy from Durban. And it's like, yeah, he's American, but he lived up from me in Umhlanga. Like, I knew the road he was on. It's like, just wait, what? Like, he was like, everything I've left, I met him again in this like foreign person who I was like, this guy will be like nothing I've ever met, because I mean, he lived in a cult. He doesn't even know patriarchy. And like, then his dad was in Durban and his brother like Northwood. And I'm like, what? Like, it's like, it's really specific, like it's really, it doesn't happen. And we were in Mexico together, and I'd now met the mother, and I was like, this is it. Like, we're going to get this. We're going to make this work. This is going to work. Like, I can do this. He's a raging alcoholic, really bad. He was also getting into drugs by this stage, just like those gummy weeds but like really like a lot, like every single, but like not like on fun occasion, every single fucking night. Like, I would go and he would always pass out. It was bad. But I thought, maybe if you love someone enough, they can get better. And we were in Mexico, and it was late at night, and he was wasted again. I know you can't say anything when they're drinking, but like I did. And I was like, I said something about his drinking, and he just snapped, and he was like, I just don't love you. If I loved you, I'd stop drinking. But obviously I don't love you. And it was like, when someone's just like trying to like stab you. And the next day I woke up, we were sleeping in his truck on the beach with dogs and sand, and he snores and alcohol and fucking terrible. And I went through a cave in the sand in Mexico and sat there, and I was like, I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. Like, do I go back to South Africa and just marry a farmer? Like, I have nowhere left to go. I have nowhere left to run. Like, why can't I get rid of this feeling that all I want to do is get rid of this fucking feeling that's inside of me, and nothing I do is making it go away. Now I'm stuck on the beach. And then I had this terrible thought, which was, what if I had a baby? Maybe he would stop drinking if I had a baby, if I got pregnant. And as I had it, I was like, oh my God, like, whose thought is that? Because I don't want children. That's not my thought. Like, what the fuck? And I was like, Jesus, no, like, you can't destroy a child. You can't have a child to save who would do that? And then I'm like, yeah. But then I was like, I'm that baby. I'm like, I'm her. I'm that child. I'm like, and I couldn't save my father, and I'm still fucking trying, like, all the time, because I just want to get it right, and nothing I do feels like enough, because I can't do the one thing that I was supposed to do. I had one job, like one sole contract, and I can't fucking do it. So it's like, and I was like, oh God. And then I was like, that's a good story. Yeah. So that's the story. And it's like, it's that desire to help, to save, to rescue, anything else, because it's like, but it's not her job.
Oh, right. It's like triggers me. It makes me want to like just punch this guy, this dad. He's like this 40-year-old man. Can't take care of this 12, not even 12, like 8-year-old is trying to like, what can I do to take care of him? It's like,
yeah, but it's so many people's reality. Like, it's like, yeah.
Like, but the 8-year-old, like, she's internalized, oh, this is my job. Like, this is, and I can't do it. And like, that's
yeah, you start to feel it that way.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the real story. Yeah. Okay, let's hear her spell. Now she does some magic. This is when it gets fun. This is secret and magic.
Yeah.
No. No, Hermosa's like the last section for a minute. Hermosa's at the very end. You could totally, but Belle's really not cool. But yeah, you could be the nice version of Belle.
We appear later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Belle. Yeah.
It hasn't been written yet.
Okay.
It's true that I came for the happy ending. Okay, let's go. So now we know what's going on, and then we'll wrap this up. The wizard said nothing could be done. They said he had some kind of allergic reaction and that self-diagnosis was recommended. They wrote down his symptoms on leaf parchment for some retrospective reflection. Digby handed Stella the muddled prognosis. A very strange case of a shrinking heart. Some notes. Symptom 1, not enoughness. Blood vessel dilation causing the strangulation of blood being pumped to the heart. Not very good. Symptom 2, too muchness. Flooding chemical release causing immune system to shock itself with the overload. Even less good. Symptom 3, dropping downness. Narrowing airways, blocking breathing, causing blood pressure to plummet down. Decidedly bad, I think. Symptom 4, heightened sensitivities, obviously sensitive to every little thing, plus strange signs and surplus symptoms like beating heart syndrome of rapid skippy beats, weakened pulse like it's dancing in slow motion, flushed red skin, rashy, especially on the nose and the eyes, bleary looking, raspy voice to losing voice altogether, nausea and vomiting, sudden passing out, prognosis is death, imminent. If he'd done it to himself or not, he surely wouldn't survive the next decade. How's that for a bunch of scribbled nonsense? Digby stared after Stella finished reading. These wizards are crazy. They stark raving mad. It's all upside down. Too muchness, not enoughness. That's my prognosis. They're insane. They're out to get me. They want to take me down. And let me tell you something, Stella. They can't, and they won't. And that's that. And I'll never let anyone get me. Remember that, because that's a fact. And he let out a rasping gurgle in pain, clasped and then clapped his heart, willing it to keep pumping on. Wide-eyed, Stella stared at the spectacle that was her father, defiant and dazzling, barefoot and bare-chested in his fuchsia-pink sequined tuxedo. He stumbled backwards, shouting, and then lurched forward, laughing, his once thickly curled hair now frazzled and fraying. He clasped the tin of stale, brewed bamboozle in his fist. Like a baby with his bottle, he wouldn't let go. Now let's eat some smashed firefly butter straight from the jar. What's next? Butter's bad for you? I'll show them all, won't I? Yes, Dad, you sure will. Stella helped her father onto the soft gold chaise and pulled a featherlight blanket to cover him. He slurped up the brew, mumbling, and then when she returned with the jar of firefly butter, he was already snoring, sound asleep. The sun had yet to rise, and she'd woken him early to get started on her thinking plan, so a little while longer to rest could only be good for him. Stella sat cross-legged at the base of the chaise and gazed up lovingly at her snoring, gaping-mouthed father. She unclasped the bottle from his fingers and placed it on the floor next to the firefly butter jar. A plan was forming, but it had come in bits and pieces. She'd been up all night scheming, but couldn't yet see how it would all fit together. Stella closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. It had something to do with shrinking. She streamed the words from the parchment together silently in her mind. Symptom, enoughness, muchness, downness, sensitivities, so many S's, shrinking. She needed to see the words, and then did. She saw the curling S shape stretching into a moving rhythm in her mind's eye. It grew larger and larger, filling the empty black space around it, rising up to the right and turning up to the left. It morphed into a giant serpent. A sharp "ss" spat out its split black tongue. "Ss." It said, like it contained a secret she wasn't meant to know. The serpent was thick and yellow-white, pale like moon showers and milky like. She squinted her eyes shut, willing herself to look inside the writhing snake. The milky substance moved inside under the serpent's skin, pulsating in liquid flow. She pushed through the spaces between its scales into the liquid to swim inside it. Inside, Stella was swept up in the contractions like being inside a heart. Faster and faster she swam, holding her breath, up, squeeze, pause, up, squeeze, pause, up, until she popped out into the black mouth cave. She pulled herself up to sit on a slippery base of the black serpent tongue, catching in her outbreath. The smell was putrid. The reek was on her skin, in her hair, seeping out of her pores. She touched the top of her left hand with a finger and placed it in her mouth to taste the horror. Bamboozle. It was horrible. All at once, the cave darkened. Stella looked up to see mountain-sized fangs closing in on her. They'd crush her. Was it too late? She squeezed her eyes small and tight and willed herself to disappear, and pow! Bright white light exploded, splintering the darkness and shattering her vision in shards. And as clearly as someone speaking directly to her, she heard one word: Anasphyxius. Stella knew what had caused her father's shrinking heart. Dad! She shook his dangling arm. Yeah, what is it? Digby shut up straight. What is it, silly? I know what's causing your heart to shrink. Anasphyxius. It's the bamboozle. It's poisoned. It's constricting your heart and squeezing like the snake, suffocating it, and your heart is shrinking to keep it safe. There's something in it, Dad. It's really bad. It's venomous, which makes sense because snakes have venom, so it's getting into the juice. You weren't to know, Dad. It's not your fault. No one told us anything about this. It's a secret. Whoa. Digby put his hands up on either side of his face, closing his eyes and smiling. Stella, that's... He burst out laughing. The best thing I've heard! Laughing. Tears streamed out his eyes. He rolled on his back, hysterical in fits of giggles. Dad, I'm serious. Stella stood over him. Dad, listen to me, she pleaded. Oh, I'm sorry, Stella, I am. Oh. He sat back up, swung his legs onto the floor to sit facing her. Dad, she took a nervous breath in and a shallow exhale out. Please stop drinking bamboozle. Digby's smile faded and his eyes darkened. Why would you say that, Stella? That's what's causing this problem. It's shrinking your heart. Enough, he boomed. Bamboozle makes you strong. Everyone in their right mind knows that. There's nothing wrong with bamboozle juice every now and again. You sound like your mother, Stella, bossing me around, trying to tie me down, telling me what to do, trying to change me. I'm trying to save you. Well, don't bother. I'm in no need of saving. They're lying anyway. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine just the way I am. Never been better, in fact. This is all some big misconception. I'm actually, Digby clasped his hand to his chest and crumpled in agony. My heart, my heart. Dad, Stella shook him. Dad, please. Digby shook and seized. His face flashed red. His pupils dilated. His mouth gaped open, but the air stuck in his throat. He couldn't inhale it. All the veins on his skin stuck out yellow and white, and his tongue started to blacken. He writhed in painful contractions on the chaise. Desperate and helpless, Stella stared in horror at the scene. He hissed, steam rising from his mouth. His hissing sparked a flash in Stella's mind from her visioning. Shh! The sound rang in her ears, filling the room louder and louder. Her head spun. Something had to be done. Shrinking heart. The words streamed together again, linking S's. She shut her eyes. Sparks of bright yellow light blotted the blackness. She saw the S starting to form and expand, and then she felt a sharp sting in her heart, followed by a lurch in her stomach, and the tiny, fine hairs all over her body stood up. She knew the answer like it was displayed, written in front of her. It was obvious. She knew what to do. The giant S was the start of the word she needed in her spell. Was the answer to her father's shrinking heart inside the actual problem itself? There was only one way to find out. The words spilled out her mouth like she had them all stored, ready and waiting. Shrinking heart, I see your plight. Shrinking heart, till out of sight. Shrinking heart, you beat on still. Shrinking now, it is your will. Shrinking heart of my father, his body shall be your armor. Protected in its shrunken size, undo the part where Digby dies. The spell is true. The spell is just. I am his daughter, and shrink you must. Shrink right down to match his heart, your body renewed as tiny art. Stella wound her hands in spiral shapes, twisting infinity symbols above her shaking father. Her words, the first spell of her life, rang loud and afraid. Light formed between her spiral loops, and she opened and closed the concentrated energy she created. The white light swelled and shone, blinding her view to her father. She stretched her arms, raised her fingers wide, and felt the white, hot love of the light in her healing hands. Your body healed, your body knew. She shot the beaming light toward her father. Kaboom. The room filled with soft white smoke. It smelled like jasmine. Stella brushed it from her face, trying to clear the space. Dad, she yelled, Daddy! The haze curled into twisted S's and rose up the ceiling, disappearing. The gold chaise was empty. Digby had disappeared. Stunned, Stella lowered herself to sit on the edge of the chaise. He was gone. She sank into the backrest, drained and melted like a frozen lake into a mud bank, her eyes stunned dry. Ow! Something sharp jabbed her lower back. She turned to see what it was. A silver glint caught her eye and she picked it up. Stella brought the object to the front of her face, lined it up with her nose. It was a tiny silver throne, no bigger than her pinky finger. And sitting on the throne was this tiny little creature. He wore a golden cape with a red heart, the full size of his torso on his, Stella looked closer, on his pink sequined jacket, matched with pink sequined pants. His mop of tiny black curls on his head sat under a lopsided laurel wreath. He was barefoot. A fragment of her father. Hello, said Stella. She looked at the little creature who bounced up and down excitedly on his throne. And while his mouth opened and closed, Stella couldn't hear him speak. She was sure he wanted to, and he seemed to be trying, but there was silence in the place of where words should be. He was a token of her father, almost an idea of him, but this miniature creature was decidedly not Digby. Still, it was something of him, and some of him was brilliant compared to none of him. She inspected the bright little twinkle in growing amusement. He was standing on his throne now, alternating high kicks with his legs and lifting his wreath crown in tandem. He had a bright open smile and seemed to be thoroughly enjoying himself, maybe laughing in a faraway sound that couldn't quite reach her. She watched as he leapt off his throne in stark kick splits, tiny legs out on either side of him. Stella's stress and anguish gave way to peals of laughter. What are you doing? She giggled. He jigged around in circles and then leapt into a flying roly-poly on her hand, sliding between her open fingers, catching himself in a dangling grip. Careful, she laughed. I don't want to lose you. She scooped him back onto his throne. There you go, much safer for you. Stella! Her miniature show was interrupted by her mother's scream. Stella! Cookie burst into the twig bungalow loft. I've been worried sick. I woke up and you were just gone. Stella closed her hand gently around the bright spark and without a second thought, put him in her pocket, close to her heart. Okay, then I'm stopping there. This is the secret. She keeps him. Okay. So much. I've never read so much in one go. Jesus.
Excellent, really well. Well done.
But it didn't seem long at all.
No, it didn't seem long at all.
It's very captivating.
When
Okay.
you see the agent,
Sunday.
good day, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's so like, that's why like it's so hard to explain. Like, how do I say this is my whole life, my whole world, and like in a sentence? Like, how do they even know what this is? I don't know how to explain it, but if you can read it.
Yeah, you just read.
It's there.
Yeah.
So good, dude.
Oh, good. Look at me in this.